All right, listener. So Kuala Lumpur's got you intrigued, huh? And yeah, it's a pretty cool city, lots going on.
Definitely a fascinating place.
But you're doing your research, and amidst all the good stuff, you're probably running into some whispers about safety.
Yeah, that's understandable.
I mean, let's face it, the latest Numbeo crime index doesn't exactly paint the rosiest picture.
True, it does raise some eyebrows.
Kuala Lumpur comes in as the third most dangerous city in Southeast Asia. Can you believe that?
Well, rankings can be tricky.
And fifth in all of Asia. Not exactly a badge of honor.
Not really, no.
With a high crime index score of 60.4.
Yeah, that's definitely something to look into.
So that's what we're doing in this deep dive, right? We're going to unpack this ranking, see what's really going on, explore the recent crime trends in Malaysia.
Yeah, we need to dig deeper, get some context.
And ultimately help you, the listener, make sense of it all. Because knowledge is power, right?
Absolutely, and I think the first thing to remember right off the bat is that the Numbeo Index, it's not just about hard numbers, like official crime stats.
Right, it's not just cops and robbers stuff.
It's more about perceptions of crime, like how safe people feel walking around, their concerns about certain types of crime.
Oh, I see. So it's like a vibe check.
Kind of, yeah. It's a gauge of public sentiment, influenced by things like media coverage, personal experiences, all that.
Okay, so it's not just a police blotter. It's like a temperature check, right? But still, third most dangerous in Southeast Asia. That kind of makes you go,
Yeah, it's not something to ignore.
And here's what's confusing me. Help me out here. How can a city have a lower global ranking, but a higher crime index score? That seems backwards.
Yeah, it's a bit counterintuitive, but it's all about the comparison groups, right? The global ranking is Kuala Lumpur against every city Numbeo covers, worldwide.
Ah, so it's a bigger pool.
Exactly, but the Asian ranking, it's a smaller pool, just cities in Asia.
So it's like apples and oranges.
In a way, yeah. So you've got a city like Klang, just outside KL. It's got a slightly lower crime index score than KL, 54.8.
Okay, so a little safer, you'd think.
But it actually ranks higher in Asia, 12th.
So Klang might feel safer locally, but globally it's got a worse rep.
Exactly, it's all relative.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
What about other major Malaysian cities? How do they stack up?
Well, there's Johor Bahru. It's ranked higher than Klang in Asia at 157th globally, with a crime index of 48.7.
Okay, getting safer.
And then you've got Penang, often considered the safest in Malaysia, with a really low crime index of 29.9, placing it 308th globally and 55th in Asia.
Wow, so there's quite a range within Malaysia itself.
Yeah, definitely not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Listener, think about this for a sec. Does KL's ranking line up with what you've heard about the city, what you picture in your head? It's interesting how these big indices can differ from personal impressions, right?
Totally. And those impressions are often shaped by what we see in the news.
Right, headlines can be powerful.
So let's actually dive into what was going down in KL in February 2025.
Let's get granular, listener. What's actually happening on the ground?
Two big trends dominated the headlines. This concerning spike in commercial crime, especially online scams.
Oh.
And some pretty big drug trafficking busts.
Okay, that sounds serious. Let's unpack that commercial crime surge first. A 26% increase in cases just in the first 33 days of 2025 compared to the year before. That's a huge jump. Is this a blip, or is there something bigger at play?
I'd say it's definitely something to pay attention to. What's interesting is that the total amount lost is actually slightly lower than last year, about RM 260 million compared to RM 264 million.
So less money gone, but more cases.
Exactly, meaning the number of victims is way up, even if the average loss per case is a bit smaller.
So wider net, smaller fish.
Yeah, you could say that. And a massive chunk of this surge is fueled by the explosion of, you guessed it, online scams.
Figures.
They make up almost 88% of all commercial crime cases and a whopping 75% of total losses in February.
It's like the Wild West out there, but digital.
It really shows how criminals are taking advantage of the online world.
Yeah, no kidding. What are the most common scams people are falling for these days?
Well, the ones that really hit people hard financially are investment scams, those promises of crazy high returns, get-rich-quick schemes, often using the hype around cryptocurrency.
Crypto. Always got to be careful with that.
Just in February, people lost a staggering RM 125.7 million in just 765 cases.
Ouch. That's got to hurt. But come on, shouldn't people be smarter than that? If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, right?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But these scammers are getting really good at what they do, and that desire for quick money, it can cloud judgment.
Yeah, greed can make people do crazy things.
It's not just about being naive, it's about how these criminals manipulate emotions, like greed and fear.
Like they're hacking minds, not just computers.
Exactly. And it's not just retirees falling for this either. There was this UVKXE investment scam in the news. A 68-year-old retiree in Selangor lost RM 1.7 million, his life savings.
That's terrible.
But then you also have this 43-year-old company manager from KL. He'd think he'd know better, right? Lost a mind-blowing RM 2.56 million in the same scheme.
So anyone can get caught up in this. It's scary. Why is cryptocurrency such a hotbed for scams, though?
Well, for one thing, it's still a relatively new and unregulated market, so it's easier for scammers to fly under the radar. Plus, the whole volatility thing, the dramatic price swings, it creates this illusion that you can make a ton of money really quickly.
So they prey on that get-rich-quick mentality.
Yeah.
It's like a perfect storm for getting scammed.
Yeah.
So what are the authorities doing about this online crime wave? Are they just playing catch-up?
They're definitely trying. The police conducted over 2,400 operations in February and made over 2,500 arrests related to online scams.
Wow, that's a lot of activity.
But the problem is getting convictions. Only about 26% of cases end up being prosecuted.
So lots of action, but not a lot of results. What's the holdup?
It's complicated. These scammers often operate across borders, so it's hard to track them down and get solid evidence.
The joys of the internet.
Plus, the laws around cybercrime are still catching up, which creates loopholes and jurisdictional issues.
It's a cat and mouse game.
Exactly. That's why awareness and education are so important, listener. You have a part to play here. Don't fall for those get-rich-quick schemes. Always double-check, verify everything.
If it sounds too good to be true,
It probably is.
sound advice. So let's switch gears for a minute, from the digital world to another type of crime that was making headlines in February. Drug trafficking.
Right, those big busts.
Yeah, there was that massive one in Pahang, over 275 kilos of siabu. What is siabu, by the way?
Siabu is just the local slang for methamphetamine. It's a powerful stimulant, very addictive.
Oh, wow, serious stuff.
Yeah.
The seizure was worth over RM 8 million. That's crazy. They only caught 2 guys, though, right? Seems like small fry compared to the whole operation.
Most likely, drug trafficking networks are usually pretty complex. Lots of layers, operatives, middlemen.
So these 2 arrests were just the tip of the iceberg.
Probably. And then there were those busts in Selangor and Kuala Lumpur, those RM 12 million drug syndicate takedowns.
Those sounded more like coordinated operations.
They were targeting 2 separate syndicates dealing siabu, heroin, cannabis, the whole works. They arrested both locals and foreigners, which suggests international connections, bigger networks at play.
So we're talking organized crime, tentacles everywhere.
Exactly. It's a win for law enforcement, for sure, but it also shows just how difficult it is to tackle drug trafficking in Southeast Asia. It's been a hub for this kind of activity for a long time.
Yeah, it's a tough fight. It's like whether it's online scams or drug trafficking, we need a multi-pronged approach, right? Law enforcement, international cooperation, and public awareness. Everyone needs to be involved.
Absolutely. And it's a fight that keeps changing. Criminals are always adapting to new technology, finding new ways to exploit weaknesses.
So, listener, we've covered these 2 big crime trends, the explosion of online scams and the ongoing issue of drug trafficking, both complex, both constantly evolving, and both with implications far beyond Kuala Lumpur.
They're just pieces of the puzzle, though.
Right, they're part of the story, but not the whole story. What about those other crimes, the ones that make the news, that make you think twice about safety? Those matter too, right?
Absolutely, they do.
So stick with us. We're going to dig deeper into the news and uncover more about the reality of crime in KL. All right, so we've talked about the big trends, online scams, drug trafficking, but those are kind of like the big picture, right?
Yeah, systemic stuff.
What about those individual crimes? The ones that really make you think twice.
Those isolated incidents.
Yeah, the ones that make the headlines, the ones that make you go, whoa, that's scary.
Those are important too, absolutely. They might be statistically less significant, but they can reveal a lot about a city.
Yeah, they kind of humanize the issue, show the cracks in the facade.
Exactly. They highlight vulnerabilities that you don't always see in the statistics.
Okay, so let's dive into some of those notable crimes from February.
Let's get specific.
Let's start with that shooting at the Setia City Mall. A shooting in a mall in broad daylight. I mean, that's terrifying no matter where you are.
It's definitely unsettling, shatters that sense of security, you know.
Yeah, you think you're safe in a mall.
Details are still coming out, but apparently the suspect is a local guy in his 30s.
Any idea what the motive was?
Not yet, but thankfully no one was killed.
Well, that's a small mercy. Still makes you wonder what pushes someone to that point. It's a reminder that crime isn't just numbers, it's about people. Their stories, their struggles.
Absolutely, it's complex.
And speaking of complex, there's that murder case in Butterworth, Penang. Really dark stuff.
The one with the son and his girlfriend?
Yeah, charged with killing his own mother, a 75-year-old woman. I mean, how do you even process that?
It's just heartbreaking. Domestic violence cases are always tragic, but this one just feels especially brutal.
It's like something out of a nightmare.
They haven't released all the details yet, but the fact that both the son and the girlfriend are involved, it points to something really messed up.
Yeah, premeditation, a troubled relationship. Who knows what else was going on there? It just goes to show that even in a place like Penang, which has this reputation for being peaceful, there's darkness everywhere.
Sadly, yeah, it challenges those idyllic images we have.
It's a reminder that crime can happen anywhere.
To anyone.
And then there's this case in Kota Kinabalu, totally different vibe, but still unsettling.
The one with the Taiwanese nationals?
Yeah, apprehended for firearms trafficking. That sounds like something out of a movie.
It does, but it's a real problem, unfortunately.
So what, they were smuggling guns into Malaysia?
That's what it looks like. Raises some serious concerns about international crime networks operating in the country, the flow of weapons across borders.
Kota Kinabalu being a port city, I guess that makes it a prime target.
It's a strategic entry point.
So we've got online scams preying on individuals, large-scale drug trafficking with international connections, and now potential arms smuggling. It's like KL is dealing with crime on multiple levels.
Local and global.
Yeah, it's interconnected. Everything's tied together somehow.
And like we saw with the online scams, technology just makes those connections even stronger, blurs the lines even more.
It's a lot to take in, listener.
Yeah.
But that's what this deep dive is all about, right? Getting past the headlines, understanding the complexity of crime in KL, not to scare you, but to inform you, to empower you.
Knowledge is power, like you said.
So as we head into the final part of our deep dive, think about this. What's your biggest takeaway? What's sticking with you? Because ultimately, it's about how you interpret this information, how you use it to navigate the world.
And how you contribute to making it a safer place.
So listener, we've gone pretty deep here, haven't we?
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
Journeyed through the dark side of Kuala Lumpur. The scams, the drug trafficking, even those isolated incidents that make you kind of hold your breath.
The stuff that makes you think twice.
Exactly. But it's important to remember that crime stats, news reports, all that, they don't define a city.
No, not at all. They're just pieces of the puzzle, right? Kuala Lumpur is more than just crime rates.
Way more. It's got culture, history, amazing people.
It's a vibrant place, a fascinating mix of old and new.
And it's easy to get caught up in the negativity, especially with all these headlines flying around.
Fear can be contagious.
But we can't let that fear control us, overshadow all the good stuff, the beauty, the energy that KL has to offer.
Right, it's about finding that balance, understanding the risks without letting them paralyze you.
And that's why we do these deep dives, right? To give you the knowledge, not the fear.
To empower you.
Exactly, so you can navigate this amazing city, make smart choices, and have a safe and incredible experience.
Because it is an incredible city, there's so much to see and do.
So let's get practical. What can we actually do as individuals to minimize those risks? Stay safe out there.
Well, awareness is key, like we talked about, being vigilant online.
Don't click those suspicious links.
Exactly. But that awareness needs to extend to the real world, too. Paying attention to your surroundings, trusting your gut feeling.
If something feels off, it probably is.
Exactly. Don't ignore those instincts. And don't be afraid to ask for help, Talk to locals, check travel advisories.
Do your research.
Yeah. Be prepared, and when in doubt, always err on the side of caution.
Better safe than... Sorry, right. What about basic safety tips? Anything specific for a city like KL?
Sure, common sense goes a long way. Secure your valuables. Be mindful of your belongings in crowded places.
Pickpockets, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And try to avoid walking alone in dark or deserted areas, especially at night.
Especially if you're not familiar with the area.
Right. It's like having a mental checklist, Check your surroundings, check your gut, check your resources.
I like that. And if you're planning a trip to KL, which I definitely recommend, do your homework, learn about the local laws and customs, have emergency numbers handy.
Yeah, be prepared.
And travel insurance, never a bad idea.
Definitely not. And remember, crime is always evolving, like those online scams. It's a new challenge, so we need to stay informed.
Right. The bad guys are always coming up with new tricks.
So pay attention to the news, follow reliable sources, stay up to date on the latest threats.
Be one step ahead.
Exactly. So, listener, we've really gone deep here, explored the good, the bad, the complexities of Kuala Lumpur. Now it's your turn. What are you going to do with this information?
What's your next step?
Maybe it's doing some more research, talking to people who've been to KL, or, hey, maybe it's booking that trip, armed with all this knowledge.
Because remember, crime doesn't have to define your experience. It's about being aware, being prepared, taking ownership of your safety.
And KL has so much to offer, the vibrancy, the culture, the people. Don't let fear stop you from experiencing all that.
Well said. So on that note, listener, we're wrapping up this deep dive into Kuala Lumpur. We hope you learned something, challenged your perceptions, maybe even sparked a little wanderlust.
Keep exploring.
Stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe out there.